Okay, let's talk about the difference between being only a personal producer selling insurance or only an agency team building recruiter that recruits agents to recruit to them. And the reason I'm putting this together is I've done both for many years, exclusively one and then exclusively the other, and then for many years both simultaneously. So I'm going to share with you my perspective on kind of what the pros and cons are of doing both of those so that you can assess for yourself, do you really want to just sell? Or do you really just want to produce, or do you want to do recruiting? My name is David DeFord, owner of DeFord Insurance Group. I train and recruit agents nationally to sell final expense Medicare and annuities, face-to-face and over the phone. If you'd like to learn more about how my agency works, there's links above and below. Just click on it and see what I got over there for you. So thanks for checking it out. So let's talk about first the benefits of personal production. Just to give you a little background, I personally produced exclusively for 2 years as an insurance agent and started my agency in 2014 and did full-time work and built an agency, full-time personal production and built an agency since 2014 to 2017. So I know a lot about personal production and what the pros are. So first of all, one of the benefits of just personally producing, and again, coming from the perspective of recruiting and producing, is there's more money and I think faster potential for more money. So in other words, because it's up to you to go out there and make things happen, you have a lot more control over yourself than other people. I think we can all agree, right? So the fact that you go out there and make things happen means that if you're good at this business and you can run a lot of appointments, it's likely the money that you'll make from that personal production will be higher than in many cases where you have to depend on other people to hopefully, have the inspiration to go work and make money and then you make an override. So the thing with personal production is that you have the ability, I think, to be, especially in the beginning compared to the beginning of building an agency, you're going to have more cash flow coming in from personally producing, and it's going to be more dependable than depending on others to go work, because not everybody's going to have your same level of aspiration or skill set, and depending on other people to replace your income in the beginning is a very dangerous thing. Number two, you just simply have more control. You control when you want to work, who you want to work with, which prospects you want to go see, kind of very similar related to the first point. And then number two, there's no adult babysitting. Guys out there are probably laughing right now. If you've built an agency and you didn't quite like it, you might refer to this as adult babysitting. Just the truth is, some agents just aren't motivated. They think they are, but they really aren't. They don't want to go the extra mile. They don't want to put the same work effort that you've put in as an agent. And you are going to have a hard time, many people at least, have a hard time of understanding the motivation of somebody who just wants to be a mediocrity. So personally producing, you don't have to worry about that stuff. You just worry about you. And therefore it leads to a lot more control. And I think, especially compared to the beginning of a building of an agency, a lot more potential to make more money. What are the cons of personal producing? So here's the thing, and this is going to depend on a product-specific basis. There certainly isn't the case all around, but if you're selling things like final expense, arguably Medicare, it's probably be more true. There is a smaller income production cap or income ceiling as a personal producer than there is with an agency building it for many years over time. In the beginning of building an agency, it's tough, right? You got to trade your time in the field to train other people, and those people may not go work to the extent that you want them to. But over time, as you build an agency, the income opportunity is usually significantly outpaces what you could do on a personal production basis. So if your income goals are high, very high, and you feel like doing the math that your personal production ain't going to cut it, much less all the time and energy and devotion it'll take, then building an agency is a smart thing to do, and possibly. And not depending exclusively on personal production is probably also a good thing to do as well. There's also the hamster wheel effect, guys, and I kind of mentioned this briefly. One of the biggest drawbacks to continual personal production your entire career is that unless you're doing a residual-based opportunity like selling Medicare, if you're selling something like mortgage protection or final expense like most of you out there in my audience, you stop making money when you stop working, right? So if you want to go on a vacation, great, but you've got weeks where you don't earn anything, and that can be very, very tough. Trust me, I know. I was there for a long time. And so the problem with just personal production, with especially life insurance products, is that the residuals on them are just not high enough to be even noticeable, and it's going to have a dramatic effect on your income. especially if you want to disconnect and not necessarily have to work to make money. In other words, have passive income opportunities. And that's the other thing too. There's not as many streams of income by just personally producing. You're just most likely, if you're like most agents, going to sell one product exclusively and not a multitude of products, although there are some who do a multitude and can diversify their income stream. And that has that direct effect to the first point, that as soon as you stop working, like the hamster wheel effect, you stop making money. So what's the pros of agency building? Let's talk about that for a minute. First of all, you have the power of scale. Granted, you make less per sale on overrides. So if you don't know, on an agency basis, the compensation is based off of the difference of your compensation versus your agents. That difference is your payout. And you have the power of scale, albeit on a smaller commission basis, to scale up. You know, I've recruited more than 2,500 agents as of middle of 2021. There's at least 150 to 200 of them on a consistent basis writing business. And that's all people I'm making money off of that I've trained, and I'm not necessarily having to go work as hard as I was out in the field. And that scale power you don't see as readily available in some products like final expense and mortgage protection on a personal production basis. And again, that helps you get that higher level of income that's more achievable as an agency builder versus simply personally producing. Number two is there's a disconnection of activity and income. So this is cool. In other words, you have the ability as an agency builder to create money passively. I don't think the passive income earning opportunity is great as a final expense or mortgage protection agent, but it tends to be a little bit better as an agency builder, because if you have enough agents out there that are working, it's not entirely passive, but you train them and they go do the real work, the grunt work, the tough stuff, and then you're passively or semi-passively in a way making money. And then especially with final expense, usually there's enough of a renewal where if you're doing a lot of production, it's a much more significant higher level of renewal than what you would get as a personal producer. So I think renewals are definitely something that actually are capable of being had as an agency builder and a life product, but not so much as a personal producer. Also, it's a less of a grind. I mean, and this is personal preference. I put that caveat out there because for me personally, I was a personal trainer before getting into final expense. I love training final expense agents, Medicare agents, annuity agents. I love it more than actually selling. So for me, this business is great because I get to help people achieve their financial goals through a business that I think is wonderful. But for a lot of those out there, again, personal preference, dealing with agents may be just terrible. You don't understand it, you don't know how to help people, and people don't know how to help themselves. It can be a very frustrating experience, completely understand. But I think for the person that's inclined to enjoy helping other people and being more on the selfless side and likes to see other people do well, agency building is a really fun thing to do. And I think for me personally, was less of a grind than going out there and repeating the same thing over and over, seeing the people, dealing with objections, etc. That gets kind of boring in a sense. It's not as creative as really just meeting new people, helping them, being an important part of their lives, and getting them to another level. I love that about agency building, and I think that's a huge pro. Cons of agency building, it's really hard to transition as a personal producer to agency building. And we talked about this earlier. The bottom line is that when you start training, you've got to give up your time that would be spent for selling to train agents on some levels, okay? But the problem of giving up that time is you give up your money making money personally producing, right? But it's a sacrifice that most of us have to make on some level. There's some things you can do to make it less of an impact. But the problem that you'll have as an aspiring agency builder is if you immediately get out of personal production and just recruit, you're in for a very bad surprise. A nightmare, in fact, because a lot of people who you recruit will never do the first thing. It's just the way the business is. And it's important that if you get into agency building to make sure that you continue to sell, continue to make money, and that way you don't completely depend on other people for your income overrides. For me, it took me 4 years of recruiting full-time and selling full-time. I worked 6 days a week, multiple nights a week, traveled to sell. I mean, I was taking appointments all day long, helping agents, doing ride-alongs before I became fully disconnected, or I should say fully capable of running an agency full time without having to sell at all. So others I've known have taken a year, 6 months, etc. So everybody's going to be kind of different. But my personal opinion is that take your time making that transition and expect that you're going to spend more time doing it. Another downside to agency building is that you're co-signing debt if you're doing any advances, which most of you will. And this means that if any of your agents are deadbeats and don't pay their chargebacks, then it rolls up to you. You've co-signed their debt, and it's going to come out of your future commission checks. And the problem is you're going to have dozens, if not hundreds of agents running around with a huge credit card that you've signed off on, and if they don't pay back their bills, it's on you to pay them back. I've had several instances where deadbeats left me with $15,000 to $20,000 that I had to pay out of my own pocket. Thankfully, it didn't happen right at the beginning. A couple of years in where I had residuals and we could take care of it. But it can make a huge detrimental impact on your business if you're not financially prepared for it. So don't take that too lightly, because yeah, chargebacks are always there for you and you can just go out and sell more. But the problem is, what if some guy commits white collar crime and screws you? It's a real thing. And so you got to be prepared for that if it happens. And really, it's not if it happens, it's when it happens to that large extent. Most people who've been in this business have eaten debt to that extent once, if not multiple times, over the many years they've been doing it. Number 3 on the list here, drawbacks of agency building. Again, if it ain't your thing to deal with other agents and you have a hard time communicating with them, getting back to them quickly, understanding that recruiting and training and developing an agent is a different skill set from selling, and you're frustrated with dealing with people, don't even get into agency building, because you have to enjoy that process in order to do this successfully. If you like the idea of passive income, and I know some of you out there with agencies that tell you how agency building is all about passive income, and it is to an extent. But it's not truly passive, because you got to deal with agents or they're going to leave you. They'll come work with me instead, because I'm going to answer the phone calls and train them. If you're not into that stuff, you should seriously be looking into Medicare. That's the best personal production line that creates passive income without the impediment or the obstacle or obstruction of dealing with agents, if you feel like that's what that is. So there is the pros and cons of agency building versus personally producing. All said and done, for me personally, I can only convey what I've experienced. And now I love agency building. I love training agents. I love helping them achieve their goals. It's a great thing to see people who weren't successful become successful in life and seeing what they can accomplish and feeling like I have some part of that, And it's a great thing for me. I love it. I love it more than selling insurance. I always enjoyed selling insurance, but was frustrated like anybody else and got tired of it, ups and downs, more so with that than agency building. But you may be the exact opposite. The key here, the biggest takeaway here, guys, is you got to figure out where you stand in this world of insurance sales. The good news is there's plenty of money to be made, but you got to do something you love, that you're excited about, and triple down on that one thing. Triple down on agency building if that's for you. Go all in. If it's personal production, triple down on that. Maybe cross-sell some Medicare if you really want passive income, and I would absolutely recommend that you do. And make it a goal of yours to be completely focused on that one thing that does well for you. And I think that's how you're going to find substantial income opportunity and certainly substantial success and happiness in selling insurance. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. David Duford logging off. Make sure to go to davidduford.com to check out how my agency works. And thanks for watching. See you next time.